We have lots of incredible things to show you this afternoon. It's going to change the way you work, the way you interact with your customers, and the way you present yourself and your brands out to the world. But first, I want to show you, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I was one of the early employees at Behance, and I now have the pleasure and the privilege of leading that business. So every month, 13 million people from all across the globe use Behance to showcase and discover creative work. Creatives are uploading their work, they're sharing it, they're finding inspiration, and they're finding new opportunities and new jobs. And we actually have this incredibly active community right here in Sydney even, with tens of thousands of creatives uploading and sharing their work in Sydney and all across Australia. Now, one of my favorite parts of Behance is called Adobe Live. And this is where creatives get to show how they work. They get to show the behind the scenes of what they're actually working on. You can think about it sort of like YouTube or Twitch. Instead of streaming a video game, though, where you're trying to destroy an enemy, you're creating this beautiful, intricate design in Illustrator and bringing the community along with you to get that behind-the-scenes view of what's happening. You know, for centuries, artists and craftspeople have learned by apprenticing to a master in their craft. And one of the fun things about Adobe Live and our live streaming efforts is that we're bringing that notion of apprenticeship into the 21st century. Another product that I have the honor of leading is called Adobe Portfolio. Now, if you're a creative, which I'm sure a lot of you are, you know that your portfolio is your representation to the world of who you are and what you've done. And so with Portfolio, you can quickly and easily build a beautiful, fully customized website in a matter of seconds on your own domain with your own brand. And best part of all, it's free with Creative Cloud. So it's a really fun product I get to work on. And lastly, I lead 99U, which is our think tank based in New York, which I'm told is the second greatest city on Earth. And that's where we get to bring creative people from all across the globe together to understand how they actually make their ideas happen. We'd actually love to see you there one day, so it's worth a trip to New York, trust me. But what connects everything that I do, and what I really love about my job, is that I get to help bring this community of creatives together. And communities like this have always been important, but they're even more vital today as collaboration becomes central to how we work. Now, another cool thing about my job is that I get to talk to people like yourself. I get to learn about your business, to understand what you're working on and what the problems are. And I've learned something, and that is that people don't actually buy your product. What they buy is their experience of your product. Now, all of us have competitors, even if we wish we didn't. And in most cases, a lot of those competitors, they're solving a similar problem and maybe even using the same technology. But those things aren't sufficient to get customers to buy. What makes the difference are things like whether the interface is intuitive, or if it's clunky. How quick is it to get things done? Is it fun? Is it elegant? Or is it drab and uninspiring? Those are the sorts of factors that determine whether a customer is going to see your product and click that buy button. Now, creativity and design, these are the keys to how customers experience your product. And that's true not just for designing the product itself, but to every interaction customers have with you, starting with that first email, that first social post, or that first campaign that they interact with. And the smartest companies realize this. They recognize that creativity, that design, it's not a cost center, it's a competitive advantage. And they're responding accordingly. They are building up their creative talent. We actually did a survey recently, and we asked a lot of top companies what sort of talent they value most. And it turns out that experienced designers are among the most prized talent at most companies. I think it's an amazing fact. So we've got this new world where creativity and design are central to how we work. But that comes with some challenges. And there are three interesting challenges that I want to outline for you. The first is what we call content velocity. And that's the demand to produce more and more content for different platforms, devices, languages, formats. The demand for that, as you know, can feel completely limitless. And so we have to make sure that creatives can work as efficiently, as effectively as possible. And we have to give them the tools that they need to work whenever and wherever to get that job done. The second big theme is about collaboration. As creative teams get bigger and they work with more outside contributors, collaboration has become critical. So when creatives work together, we have to make sure that everybody's using the same colors, that same version of that product asset, and that the designs look cohesive, they look unified. And now everyone in an organization, from legal to marketing, all the way up to the CEO, they want to have a say in the creative output. They want to give their feedback. So it's essential to have really effective ways to incorporate the feedback from all the relevant stakeholders in a company. And lastly, we've got these new paradigms of how we communicate with our customers. You all are building these incredible experiences today, but that's not going to cut it for tomorrow. For example, your customers are now expecting you to let them interact with you through voice, or perhaps they'll want to see your products in 3D or projected into their living room with AR. So there are tons of interesting challenges, but these are just a couple of the ones that we are thinking about, and we're building tools and solutions to help you succeed here. Now, one of those tools that I want to highlight is Adobe XD. Now, hopefully a lot of you know this tool already, but it's our relatively new entrant into the design market, but it's been adopted by lots of leading companies and brands already. And as much as with any product we have ever built, we're building this with you. We get your feedback constantly, we incorporate it, and we release new features and pretty massive product updates every single month. And best of all, it's actually free to use. So if you haven't tried it yet, I'd urge you to check it out. A cool thing about XD is that it's actually the first and only design and prototyping tool where you can create a prototype for a voice interface, like with Amazon's Alexa or Google Home. And it's also where we are rolling out lots of new and more efficient ways for stakeholders of creativity to collaborate. So how do we do this? One example is through our cloud document structure. So if you have a cloud document within an XD, your project lives in the cloud. And what that means is that every time a designer adds a new asset to a design or a stakeholder reviews something, they're always seeing the latest version. Now, the truth is, XD's become critical to my personal workflow. Every single day, I am reviewing comps and prototypes in XD for Adobe Live, for Adobe Portfolio, for Behance. I couldn't do my job without these tools. So Cloud Docs are starting in XD, and we're bringing them to all of Creative Cloud pretty soon. Another great thing about XD are design systems. Now, a lot of smart companies are setting up design systems, and they're doing this to ensure that everything that they produce is consistent and harmonious. The design system in XD makes this pretty easy. You can make sure that everyone's using the latest version of the logo, the right button, or the new brand colors. And whenever one of these components changes, you get this notification with an XD, and then with a single click, you can accept that change, and every instance of that component changes across XD. It's quite powerful. And you're going to see a lot more of what XD can do in the demos coming up pretty soon. So another thing that I've learned about creativity is that it can't be constrained. Inspiration comes to you when it's going to come to you. Maybe on the bus, at dinner, at home, in the middle of the night. And when you get that inspiration, you've got to act immediately to capture it. Further, we've got these demands of content velocity where we need to be producing more and more content. So we have to be able to create anywhere, anytime. So we are freeing creative tools from the desktop. We are now able to offer the full power of Photoshop on an iPad, which is an incredibly exciting development for us. What's more, we're also introducing a brand new app called Adobe Fresco. This is a drawing and painting app where we are recreating the feeling of painting in oils and watercolors in this amazingly lifelike way. Both Photoshop and iPad and Adobe Fresco are going to be available later this year, and I cannot wait for you to get your hands on them. They are fantastic products. Okay, let's talk about 3D. Now, the last time you saw a car commercial, you've got an SUV bumping along in the outback, or perhaps a convertible that's cruising past Bondi Beach, chances are really good that that scene wasn't actually shot on location. It was actually rendered on a computer in 3D. 3D content creation has become this huge force in the world of marketing and advertising, even when what's being produced is only seen in 2D. That's because it's interesting that it's actually cheaper and easier to render that scene in 3D than it is to shoot it in real life. So that's why we are adding the Substance 3D content creation tools to Creative Cloud. You've got Substance Designer and Substance Painter, and these are the Photoshop of 3D content creation. They create the textures and the materials that make a 3D object look and feel lifelike. They are amazing tools, and you're going to get a great demo of them in a little bit. So a lot of 3D today is actually being experienced in 2D, but that's going to change, especially when we start to think about augmented reality. I mean, it's great to see that commercial and to see that car driving by, but wouldn't it be better to have this 3D model in AR where you can see exactly how the dashboard works, see how much room you've got in the back seat, and if you actually like the lines of the car? We think AR has the potential to be bigger than the web because it's going to bridge the digital and the physical worlds. So we are empowering anyone to create an augmented reality with Project Aero. Aero lets you create AR experiences with the tools that you already know and love, like Photoshop and Adobe Dimension. And you don't have to worry about all of the technical details because that's all handled for you under the hood by Adobe Sensei, our AI engine, leaving you free to create. Okay, that's a lot for me, but we've got this fantastic lineup of speakers and demos, and it's going to highlight all of these things I talked about. So thank you for coming, and enjoy the rest of Symposium.
Welcome very much. Thank you so much for coming today. We're so glad that you could make it back to the Darling Theatre where we were 2 years ago, and it's wonderful to see you all. My name's Michael Stoddart, and I'm going to be your MC for the day. Please call me Stod, everybody does. That's where you can find me on Twitter and various other social media platforms. I wanted to first of all thank Will, who came out and he set the scene for us for what we're going to see this afternoon. And it's been a great year for creativity, for design, for experience. This past year, I've been at Adobe for some time, and this past year, I've never seen design discussed so much across the board, from individual creative people all the way through to our largest brands. Design has never been so top of mind. And design, of course, implies that creativity that we all had. So when we put together this afternoon, we wanted to make sure that we really spoke to what it is that you are looking for. We want you to be inspired. We want you to be moved. We think we're going to make you awed and maybe even confronted by some of our international and our local speakers. Before we start, a little bit of housekeeping. Okay, mobile phones, turn them on. Okay, keep them on silent though. You can put them in your lap. You can look down. No one looks down at that lap and laughs unless they're using a mobile phone. So use your mobile phone. Tweet. The hashtag is Adobe Simp, and we want to get you out there. And we want you to trend the creative keynote, the fun stuff, the cool stuff out of this room. In the likely event that we do have to evacuate, I am required to tell you that the exits are up the back of the room. So everyone head up that way. So what are we going to do this afternoon? Well, we've broken it up into 3 areas. We're going to start with experience design, of course. We're then going to look at immersive design and what that means, and we'll touch on a few of those things as well. And then we will finish off with what we're calling multi-channel design, which is a terrible name, but it means that design that goes out across lots and lots of different touch points. It's each of these areas, experience design, immersive design, and multi-channel design, is what Adobe is building on for the future, and we'll touch on a few of those. And each of these areas is where we're evolving our platform from our foundational products, as you've seen, our Photoshop, our Illustrator, our InDesign, all the way through to some of the new technologies. But they build, they stack one on top of the other. So, we start, of course, with experience design. Experience design is so very much top of mind. And Chi Ryan is our first speaker. Now, Chi has lived that journey that so many of us are either currently on at some point in that. Like many of us, she started out as a graphic designer. She built her first website back in the 90s. She's studied and practiced and led visual design teams, digital design teams, industrial design, product design, service design, system design, and every other type of design in between. She's produced products. She's produced services, brands, event spaces, process design, systems design, organizational ritual design, cultural models. She's run the gamut. And she's a very giving presenter. She's helped everybody from startups through to global giant brands evolve through design. So as a result, she is today the National Experience Strategy Lead at PwC. And she's going to share her story on what I think you'll find challenging and confronting, and what it means to design for... Actually, I'm going to let Chi speak to that. Ladies and gentlemen, I can think of no better person to kick us off to the cool, fun part of this afternoon at the Symposium Creative Keynote. Can you please welcome to the stage Chi Ryan.
Hi everyone, thanks for being here. I am Chi Ryan and I am a designer just like you guys. I'm here today because I want to help you think more critically about the things that you make. A few weeks ago, I came home to Australia after living overseas for a few carless years abroad, battling transit creatures in public transport hell in the greatest city of the world, New York. So now that I'm back living in Sydney, I decided it was time to get myself a new car. Because, well, Sydney transport sucks. But I tried small cars, hybrids, SUVs, and four-wheel drives. I test drove them all. And the more cars that I test drove, the more that I noticed how much they all looked and felt the same. It was like paint by numbers. In my quest for something different, I test drove a rather pricey hybrid vehicle, which I won't name and shame, that had some very fancy functionality, including a dashboard that transformed physically like a transformer, and some buttons that had different modes that would make driving more delightful for drivers. At the urging of the car salesman, I put the car into sports mode, and as the power kicked in on this very quiet hybrid vehicle, it started making some hooning turbo noises. Nee, nee, nee. My husband, who happens to be here, he loved it. He thought it sounded like a supercar. And admittedly, for a split second, I thought it was pretty funny too. But what seemed a little bit strange to me was that these noises seemed to be coming from inside the car. So I asked this car salesman if the sounds were coming from the engine or from somewhere else, to which he laughed and he said, they're kind of fake car noises. My amusement quickly turned to despair when I heard the sales guy chuckle and say this. In that moment, I realised that if a car salesman, consciously or unconsciously, could recognise the absurdity in this design, something was deeply wrong. I didn't buy that car. I bought a Mini. And the reason I bought the Mini was because a Mini still manages to maintain that big car personality in a small footprint brand experience. And it also made real car noises. But most people can shake off a bad experience like that as a momentary frustration or a waste of time that doesn't really mean anything. I'm not that lucky. This is my bread and butter. Designing for experience is something that I've done my whole career. And this whole situation left me in a bit of a conundrum in terms of my profession. Here I was questioning my design practice because of weird car noises. And it made me think, how are we going to save ourselves from a future of boring, absurd, insincere, reckless, and potentially dangerous experiences at the hands of design? At the same time, I was preparing to come here and talk to you. So I figured that this was as good a time as any to share my fear that design is killing our experience. So, what is experience? Quite literally, wherever you turn, in this place as well, the word experience is on everybody's lips. There's a huge wave of interest in experience. User experience, customer experience, the experience economy, digital experience. But what does experience really mean? So I wanted to explain to you what experience means to me. If we look at the etymology of the word, its earliest meaning was knowledge gained by repeated trials, and coming from the Latin word experii, which means to try or to test. So experience at its most basic refers to going through events or occurrences that leave an impression. Our experiences change the way that we think, feel, and act. And experience is happening to us all the time, even right now, for as long as we exist. So to design for experience is to design for human existence. And experience design, no matter what people will tell you, is not the design process that you use. It's not the set of wireframes that you make. It's not a pattern library, and it's definitely not a mobile app. Designing for experience means a fundamental shift in the way that we think about the things that we make. We tend to think about designing for experience in the same way that we've thought about designing everything else that we do since the Industrial Revolution. That means that it's a means of mass production, a repeatable process, and not as the dynamic outcome of being human. When it comes to designing for the human experience, Maslow's hierarchy is a really good place to start. It starts with basic needs, so that's around comfort, and these are the biological requirements we have for being a human survival. So like air, food, water, shelter, warmth, sex, sleep. And then there's safety needs, so protection from the elements, security, freedom from fear. Next up, we need love, interpersonal relationships that motivate our behaviours, like friendship and intimacy and trust. We have esteem needs. So these are things for the self, dignity, achievement, and our reputation and respect from others. And then finally, at the top of the pyramid, we have self-actualization needs. So this is really about becoming everything that one can become. Of course, there's a lot more to human experience. There's physical senses, touch, taste, smell, sound, vision, heat, cold, time, past, present, future, and the way that we create memories. There's consciousness and unconsciousness, aspirations, goals, expectations, growth, conflict, health, mortality, ethics, good, evil, right and wrong. Rational, emotional, and biological. The human experience is complicated, unpredictable, and messy. When we consider all of this, experience is at the core of human existence. And without diving too deeply into existentialism, if we are not here to experience, what are we here for at all? Designing for these things in mind can really change the way that people think, feel, and act. And that is a big responsibility. I'd like to introduce you to my mum and my friend Jared. My mum is a nurse and she's a designer. A few years ago, she asked me if there was any way that she could use design in her work as a nurse. So I sent her off to do a service design course. Now she works with people who are fully ventilated. That means people who can't breathe for themselves without a life support machine. A lot of the people that she works with have physical challenges like motor neuron disease or quadriplegia, like Jared. And so they have no agency over their own body. And oftentimes they're not able to speak either, including, and that means that they need help with everything they do in their lives and to live the experience that they want to live. Mum's job is to help the ventilated people that she works with articulate and map the experience that they want to live and to act as their voice, especially when they don't have one. As you can imagine, it takes an army of people to facilitate that desired experience, and my mum's job is also to teach carers, nurses, doctors, families and friends how to facilitate that desired experience. The high risk for fully ventilated people is that their tracheostomy tube will block, which means that they can't breathe and that they rely on other people around them to work quickly and effectively to unblock the tube. It's a terrifying experience for anybody, but especially for the person who can't breathe. And unless you've drowned or choked before, it's pretty hard for most of us to understand what it's like to be unable to breathe or to rely on someone or something to do it for you. So I'm going to do a little simulation for you. All right. So, and this is something that I think that you should all try at home the next time that you see a balloon. So, firstly, I'm going to blow this balloon up, all right? So, here we go. I feel like a bit of a clown right now. All right, now I'm going to let the air out of this. Hope that sounded really awesome. And now I'm going to put a knot in this balloon. And I'm going to blow it up again. Ready? You get the idea. It's impossible to blow up a balloon with a knot in the end. The reason that I show you this is because this is exactly how one of Mum's clients described the lived experience of having a blocked tracheostomy tube, not being able to breathe. And now Mum uses this exercise to simulate that lived experience of a blocked tracheostomy tube when she's training able-bodied people in how to care and facilitate the desired experience for fully ventilated people. The point that I'm making here is that everything and every part of our lives has an experience attached, and whether we design for it or not. And we need to wake up to the fact that designing for the human experience transcends interfaces, technology, products, and services. It's about understanding, communicating, and designing for the condition of being human, for all humans and humanity, which is a heavy burden. But if we all take responsibility for that, it's not so hard. Because defining the trajectory of future experiences shouldn't be limited to the cunningly crafted interactions dictated by rich white people or Silicon Valley, which means the way that we design needs to drastically change. I'm sure you've all seen those articles about five design jobs that won't exist in the future, and the hype around automation stealing our jobs away. Well, I think that, quite frankly, is a load of bullshit so long as humans exist, and I'm going to explain why. While I was living in New York, there was one thing, aside from public transport, that really shit me. Doors. I never knew when I needed to push or pull, even in my own building. And I figure that so long as opening a door is still broken, we're always going to have a job, albeit with a bit of an overhaul. And of course, following the design process might provide repeatable, bankable, predictable outcomes, but making things without fully understanding and investigating the impact to the human experience is just making a mess, sometimes with tragic results. In the book Tragic Design by Jonathan Chariot, there's a story about a young cancer patient who had been struggling with her illness for a long time, and she started to take a new medication in hospital. Her treatment was so aggressive, she required 3 days of pre- and post-hydration during medication periods. The nurses were responsible for entering all the required data to medical software. Using the software, they would follow up on her progress. Although they used this software really diligently to care for the patient, somehow they missed some critical information about that 3-day hydration requirement on the interface. The day after the treatment, the patient sadly died from toxicity and dehydration. The experienced nurses made this critical error because they were too distracted by the interface to understand what they needed to enter to make sure she got the right care. To create the future that we need, an inclusive future for all, we need to change the way that we design, shifting from making things without question to questioning why we should make them at all. Just imagine if we'd asked some more questions when plastic was being invented. Or before the notorious Three Gorges Dam was built. So this hydroelectric dam that spans the Yangtze River in China is the world's largest power station. The amount of energy it generates is so massive, it's said to support all of China. And I want to give you a few facts about it. So to generate all the energy that it requires, it takes so much infrastructure. There's 34 massive generators which burn through 25 million tonnes of crude oil or 51 million tonnes of coal per year. That's a huge amount. When the project was constructed, 1.2 million people were displaced. They had to move and leave their homes. 70% of China's fresh water is already polluted, but the dam is making it a lot worse because it's built on old infrastructure. And the dam is so massive that it has its own microclimate, and that is threatening the natural ecosystems of the region, including thousands of plants, insects, fish, and terrestrial vertebrae. But if all of that wasn't scary enough, in 2010, NASA scientists calculated that the shift in water mass stored inside the dam increases the length of an Earth day, that's the 24-hour period that we go through, every day by 0.06 microseconds. It makes the day longer and makes the Earth slightly rounder in the middle and slightly flatter at the poles. Its design has quite literally changed the world for all the wrong reasons. Sometimes you just have to stop and ask yourself, is the juice worth the squeeze? Just like last week, the internet blew up about horns on the back of young people's heads as a result of smartphone use, and whether that's true or it remains to be seen. But the possibility is frightening and begs the question, what kind of future are we creating? But hope is not lost. The future isn't fixed, and we have the power to design it. From the macro scale of megadams to the micro scale of buttons on an interface, designers are in the best position ever to influence the future of human existence through thoughtful contextual design decisions. And absurd as it is to make fake car noises, In a different context, fake car noises can be quite a valid human experience. As electric cars become more accessible, worries about the potential dangers of silent vehicles to pedestrians, cyclists, and blind people are growing. The European Union has set a new requirement that requires all of electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles to emit a sound warning by 2021. That means that when cars are travelling at 12 miles per hour or less, they have to emit a sound so that pedestrians know that they're coming, even if you can't see the car. So instead of trying to delight with gimmicks and gadgets, we need to focus our efforts on the human needs by acting as experienced Sherpas, advising and guiding our clients towards the real impact on human existence that should drive the things we do and do not make. Every journey starts with a leap of faith, and there are a few simple things we can do to make sure that design doesn't kill our experiences. So, first up, ask why before you say yes. Before you agree to make something, ask why we should make it at all. Because you're not being difficult, you're actually mitigating risk. And that's the big secret. Design is risk mitigation. We need to stop relying on the design methods. Us designers have been so busy singing Kumbaya about design methods and overcomplicating what design is and is not. We've lost sight of the reason that we do this in the first place, which is people. Invest your time and energy into who you're designing for instead of navel-gazing. By industrialising our craft, we've created an entire generation of designers who think that reusable patterns and pixel perfection equate to creating experiences that delight. Patterns are complacent, and complacency breeds mediocrity. If we continue relying on the patterns, nothing will change and everything will look and feel the same. Delight is a gimmick. Get to the necessity and stop wasting people's precious time, money, and energy on short-lived stunts. And be more critical, not of your work, not of yourself, but of your work. After all, design is not for you, it's for everybody else. You can do that by asking some simple questions of your work. How could this change people's lived experience for good or for bad? In 20 years, what is going to be the effect on people because of this? In 50 years, what could the effect be on the world because of this? Unfortunately, the worst of what we make will outlive us, and we have to fight to make sure that doesn't happen. If there's one slide that you take a photo of today, let it be this one and keep it with you. Make sure that you ask yourself when you're designing, did you ask why? Did you kill the methods and try something else? Is this a copy of a copy of a copy? Is your design timeless? And can you defend what you've made? And more than anything else, did you design with awareness of what you're making? Because at the end of the day, the world doesn't need another boring, absurd, reckless, or dangerous experience at the hands of design. I'm Chi Ryan, I'm a designer, and I believe that being more critical is going to save us. Thank you so much. Enjoy Symposium.
Hey, so wasn't that different? Wasn't that good? I bet you didn't expect to hear rich white males in a Symposium keynote presentation. You know, what she said there, that ask questions, that thing that stuck with me was, wouldn't the world be different if we asked more questions when we were designing plastic, given that we know what we got with today? So, again, thank you, Chi. It's a great start to this afternoon and just a taste of what we've got to come. You know, we're also going out live. We're live streaming out to our Asia Pacific and the rest of the world. So welcome for everybody who's live streaming. Also, you may notice that Adobe is known for its software, but we're also known for our T-shirts. So I'm going to be treating you to a little bit of a fashion show. Out there on the show floor, everybody has their I'm Not Messy, I'm Creative T-shirt. If you want to find an Adobe creative person, look for that one. You've got to be careful when you're wearing a jacket because you can end up with just not creative. Okay, so be careful. All right, so what does Adobe have, though, if you are an experienced designer? Hoyle Wang is part of the team building Adobe XD. And as Will mentioned, we're building Adobe XD from scratch. Okay? It's been quite some time since we've done that as a company, and we're building it from scratch in a very easy way by asking you what you want in the product. Hoyle is a product manager. He has a whole team that is shaping this next generation tool set, for all of us, because we all need to design for experience. It's the most exciting thing that Adobe has built for quite some time, and Hoyle is going to give us a sneak peek as to why. Again, Hoyle, like Chi, has some sessions tomorrow, so you can deep dive into this XD in quite some detail. But to give us just a quick sneak peek of what we truly believe is the future of design tooling, can you please welcome all the way from San Francisco, Product Manager for XD, Mr. Hoyle Wang.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hoyle. I'm a product manager working on XD, and I'm so excited to be here at Symposium with you this afternoon. So I've been in Sydney this past week talking with customers, and I get a lot of questions of, what is XD and how can I use it? Well, as it turns out, our customers are using it for a variety of different things, from making low-fidelity wireframes to high-fidelity prototypes to collaborating within their organizations to make design systems. But the truth of the matter is a lot of our customers are using it for all of these things. We really see XD as an end-to-end collaboration platform for designing and prototyping user experiences. So there's 3 things I want to talk to you about today. The first is design at the speed of thought, and then collaborating to make amazing experiences, and finally, designing at scale. So I want to get started with designing at the speed of thought. What does design at the speed of thought mean? Instead of just going through a deck, I thought I'd just show you an XD. Design at the speed of thought means not having to interrupt your flow by hopping between different tools to design, prototype, and share experiences. You can do that straight within here. So there's design mode, prototype, and share. We've taken a less is more approach with the interface of XD. So as you're looking, it looks familiar to the other Adobe apps, but what we try to do is, since we're building it from the ground up, we're stripping away everything that you don't necessarily need and only giving you what it is that you need at the time that you need it. XD was also built from the ground up for performance. So as you notice, when I'm panning around and zooming in, everything is buttery smooth, even when I'm from all the way out here to going down to an individual artboard level. Now, design at the speed of thought means us creating tailor-made tools that cut down on repetitive tasks for you. So a classic example of this is a tool called a repeat grid. So before, designers had to take elements that were grouped. They'd have to copy them, paste them, move it over, do it over and over again, and go back and adjust the padding between them manually. Instead, in XD, there's a tool called the repeat grid. I just go here in the property inspector and I turn that on. You notice that the handles change. And as I pull out the handles, it's going to create copies of that in whichever direction I pull. But the coolest part actually is that you can go in and change that padding dynamically, maintaining consistency. We also make it really easy to bring in content into XD. So here I've got some images. I'm just going to multi-select those and drag and drop. And you can see that they automatically fill to my repeat grid. Same thing with text. So I've got some captions here for my cards. And I've got some titles. And just drag and drop, and it just works. Another thing that we found that UX designers were constantly doing was to take elements and retrofit them for different screen sizes. So here I've got a card that's been designed for a mobile layout, and traditionally what I'd have to do in order to resize it is I'd go in to every single individual layer, move objects around, and it's just a bit tedious. So in XD, we built a tool called Responsive Resize, and you can see that I've turned that on. And what Responsive Resize does is we developed this through looking at thousands of different designs, and we said, what if there was a better way that we could help you resize objects? So there's an algorithm within XD that, as you're resizing, takes a look at the things that you've already given us, the layout of your elements, how you've grouped them together, and takes its best guess at giving you the result that you'd want as you're resizing. Finally, I'm going to zoom out a little bit here, and I'm feeling pretty good with my design, but all of us have seen a situation where our creative director comes in and says, hey, can you come in and lighten this up a little bit? And in XD, actually, traditionally I have to go in, make individual changes, but in XD there's a panel called the Assets panel. The Assets panel is curated of the colors and character styles and components I'm using over and over again in my design. So I can go in here, and any edits that I make to the Assets panel are global. So I can actually go in and lighten that up a little bit. Finally, I want to show you components. So as Will mentioned, components are the building blocks to your design system. So if I go in here, my first component that I create is a master component. It's got a diamond in the upper left-hand corner, and I can go in and I can make some copies of it. I can do whatever I want to a component. I can go in and take this paw and replace it with people. I can replace the text. I can go in and I can resize it, add additional objects in there. The whole point of components is to be as flexible as possible while still maintaining that contact to that source of truth. So you can see as I'm changing the corners here, it's actually changing for all of them. So that's design, but as you all know better than anyone else, it's not just about, experience design isn't just about how something looks, but rather how it works and how it feels. So in XD, if I want a prototype, that's just switching over to prototype mode. Now what happens is I can take from any object, I can drag a wire to another object. I've got a dissolve transition as a default, and I've gone ahead and wired some of these things that you'd expect, like fixed elements and an overlay. So I'm going to open up my preview window to see what that experience would look like. You can see as I scroll, there's some elements that are fixed. I can click on this to have an overlay. And finally, I can click on Antelope to transition to that artboard. Now that feels okay, but I really want this to be a little bit more expressive and feel more real. So I'll take Antelope and I'll change the transition type to Auto Animate. What Auto Animate does is it takes a look at my two different artboards, and as it's transitioning from the first to the second, it automatically animates the difference between the two. I don't have to hop into a timeline-based program like After Effects. I just go from one artboard to another, and it just works. So let's preview that. So if I click on here, you can see XD is doing all of that hard work for me. Now, we don't want you to only prototype for the experiences that you have today, but also that of tomorrow. So you can also design for voice-based experiences in XD. Now, this is an experience for planning a trip to Yosemite. So I'm going to create voice as a type of trigger, and I'll just say, XD, help me plan a trip to Yosemite. From here, I'll open up the preview window and say, XD, help me plan a trip to Yosemite.
Hi, Hoyle. There are 2 experiences available. Which would you like to choose?
Now, I'm a bit broke after flying all the way here for a 10-minute demo, so I'll go with the discounted one. Let's go with the discounted one, please.
Great. I'm booking your experience now. Done. You are all set, Hoyle. Now get back to your demo.
Okay, so XD's time checking me. So, all right, so that was design and prototype, but we also have the ability to share within the application as well. So the Share tab is just up here. I can click on that, and I can share an experience for review. Now, I've gone ahead, and I've already uploaded it to the web, and only the people that I've invited can view. So we can collaborate together on this experience. Now, when I open it up here on the web, you can see it's that full same experience, auto-animate transition, and I also get comments in here. I can go in here and hit reply to comments, resolve the ones I feel like I've already addressed. And it looks like Meredith, the developer I'm working with, says that she's ready as soon as I produce specs for her. Oh boy. So I'm going to go back to XD, and now I'm thinking I'm going to have to take all of these things, package them as a PDF, package my assets together. Well, actually, we try to do some of that hard work for you as well. So in XD, you can share for development, which creates a design spec. So again, I've uploaded that here on the web. I don't have to have a Creative Cloud account. It's just a web URL. And I can hover over the artboards to see the wires that I've wired up. I'm going to go back to that Yosemite artboard. And you can see right here, I've got the colors, the character styles, the interactions. I can also download assets straight from the web. So I've got things that are vectors and bitmaps, and also select and inspect things and measure the distance between them. All right, so that was design at the speed of thought, and collaboration. Now I want to talk about design systems and designing at scale. So going back to this document, I mentioned that my assets panel serves as the source for my colors and my character styles and components. I've gone ahead and actually isolated those into another document, and you notice this document has a little cloud icon. What that means is that it's a cloud document, so the source of truth is in Creative Cloud. One of the biggest problems that we see with design systems is that not everybody always has access to that one single source of truth. And so since it's hosted in Creative Cloud, I can share this document and invite others to edit. And then whenever they create a new document, they'll have the ability to link assets from that cloud document to this document. So if I press this button, click on Compass Design System, just in 2 clicks, all of the assets that I've curated in my assets panel are now a part of this document. They have this little link icon. What does that mean? Well, if I go here and I drag out a component and I resize it and make some overrides, maybe I'll go in and add an additional button. You can see that it has this little green icon in the upper left-hand corner, which means that it's linked back to the master component from the original document. I can right-click on it, hit Edit Master in Source Document. That'll open up my source document and select the master component that it came from. From there, I can go in and make a color change and apply that gradient. And if I switch back to that document, you can see how it now has a little blue badge. If I hover over that blue badge, I can preview what those updates are in context with my design, so I'm not getting interrupted. And I don't have to accept it. If I hover off of it, then it's just back to the original state. Then I can click on it to accept, and now I'm back in sync with the source of truth. So that was a really fast overview of XD. But XD is really the best when it's in the hands of designers like you. So in order to get started, please check out letsxd.com. There's tons of great resources by the team. And I encourage you guys to come to Sneaks tonight. There's some pretty fun things that we'll be showing that are coming in the future of XD. And come and check out the sessions tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Designers are looking for solutions that can help them make that transition from concept all the way to production in a much faster way.
The goal is to build a truly meaningful brand that has resonance and impact in the lives of its members.
XD is really valuable from the standpoint of you can make and produce and then analyze and scrutinize and bring this full circle experience.
One of the beauties of XD is this ability to really see this massive canvas of everything for a particular design.
You can zoom in super quickly and just see it, and it's always super crisp and you never have to wait for anything to load.
The first thing that I was kind of wowed over is just the sheer speed of XD.
Typically, you have to jump from one software program to 6 others in order to finally get the design out there.
Adobe XD is just amazing. From wireframe to high-fidelity design, you have everything in one single tool.
For web and mobile, traditionally we have designed them slightly more separate. Now with XD, we've been designing them completely simultaneously. It was extremely easy to learn. Any other application I open up now is like going 5 years back in time.
People used to say you can do 3 things when you're creating work. You get high quality, low cost, and you can get it fast. Choose 2 of those. Now it's all 3.
So XD, huh? If you've got Creative Cloud, you already have XD. So why do you need anything else? If you don't have Creative Cloud, you can download XD at no cost, prototype, and try it out for yourself. So I encourage you. It's a great environment in which to work. You know, thanks, Hoyle. But creativity, as we heard, isn't all about experience design. It's not all UX, IX, TX. We next want to talk about immersive design. You know, Gartner, the consultants, have this hype cycle thing, and they have this great quote: the biggest barrier to wide adoption of immersive technologies is the lack of good user experience design. So we've seen how you can create good user experience design. Now let's stack it on top of what do you do with that good user experience, and this is why. You use it for immersive design. Immersive design attempts to connect content with people. That's the whole point, connecting with people, to elicit that emotional response that you're trying for with your design. Okay, that's what we're all trying to do, aren't we? Ayres can do this. She started her career using words to engage people in new and interesting ways. In fact, she can even humanize AI. She's given real, feel human voices to chatbots. Because that's Carly's premise this afternoon. Anything can be interactive. Brands, marketing, job applications, t-shirts. Carly helps brands have a better conversation with their customers. So Carly is going to help us this afternoon be just a little bit better by understanding that design is a conversation. Why your creativity should not only say something, but should allow your customers to say something back. She's from New York. She's from Brooklyn. She's a long way from home, so please make her feel welcome. Ayres.
Oh my gosh. How fun. I was told this is supposed to be the fun part. Are we all having a good time? All right. We'll see if we can amp that up a little bit. As you heard, I'm Ayres. Thank you so much for having me here. It was quite a journey, but I'm glad to be here. For those of you who don't know me, this is my website. It's a Google Doc. You can go on it right now. You can edit it, add things, make changes. As you just heard, for most of my career, I've worked as a writer, using words and language to engage people in new and interesting ways. And as such, this website is somewhat emblematic of that, in that, as a Google Doc, it tends to be my medium of choice. It's where I do a lot of my best work, I like to think. But it's also participatory. People can come on, they can add images, make changes. And so it's seen quite a few iterations since 2015. Earning it the very prestigious title of one of the 10 ugliest websites on the internet. Thank you, Fast Company, for that. Yes, all right. Kind of design you wanted to see today. And up until a few months ago, I was also a partner at a design and technology studio by the name of Ayres, based in New York. I co-founded it 3 years ago with these lovely gentlemen perched upon these stools, Andrew, Nikki, and Pedro. You may have seen our work in the form of voyeuristic e-commerce websites, like this one for Los Angeles brand Entire World, or from when we brought a few smiles to a few cities across the United States for a dental startup, including this mirrored poster you can take selfies in. Fun. Or this sound reactive identity system for the Brooklyn Symphony Orchestra that we worked on with the good people at Super Union. Ooh, and this one for artist Tae-yoon Choi, who runs the School for Poetic Computation, for his latest book by the same name, Poetic Computation. And true to form, it allows you to engage with the text in a lot of interactive and truly intentional ways as you adjust like the type size and the color and all that good stuff. Or perhaps you've stumbled upon our website at one point or another, where you can draw all over it, as I've done here. You can play tic-tac-toe with a bot, or draw us an email, along with a few other things. It now looks like this. After we made the decision to shut the studio down, we made a few small tweaks. You'll see we crossed out is. It's in past tense now. Was. We added a little note thanking everyone who worked with us and collaborated with us over the past 3 years. And along with that, we also shared a folder to a Google Drive where we included all the tools and templates, a bunch of resources that we had collected over the past 3 years of running a studio, in hopes that it might be interesting or ideally useful for someone else looking to embark out on a similar endeavor. And of course, like any good design studio, we also created some visual assets, make it a little fun. We put them on the website, our newsletter, and of course on Instagram. But for us, figuring out how to run a studio was always the project. It was this box that we could experiment within, stand on top of, sometimes doodle around. as a way of trying out different ideas, these ways of working and thinking that we wanted to test in running a studio of our own. So the studio was always this recursive exercise in learning by doing. Could we get the work we wanted to do and still make money, have health insurance? Could we balance getting the work and talking about the work, doing it as well? Could we shape these proposals and also share some of them along the way? We all met working together at Google's Creative Lab in New York, and so like any good Google-bred designers, we started with a Google Doc. Together we made a list of these things, these ways of working and thinking, values and rules, all the stuff we wanted to try out and see what worked. Like number 1, concept. Always start with concept. Never do something just because that's the way it's been done before. Do not pander to the bureaucracy. That was an important one. Always tell the truth and to always be learning. Those were just a few of them that we wrote back in 2015, but every year we'd check back in on that list. We'd make changes, add addendums to make sure we were continuing to grow and evolve in all the ways that we wanted to. That was a more current version that Andrew kept on his desk up until the end. So today, I thought I'd talk about practice, these things we do over and over and over again in hopes that each time will be slightly better than the last, be that designing and building interactive websites or starting and shutting down design studios. I'm going to share a few of the things that we practiced as a studio, how that manifested in a lot of the work that we did, as well as some of the things I'm going to try to continue practicing moving forward. As you heard, one of the truly fundamental beliefs to the studio was this idea that anything could be interactive. So be that a Google Doc, a mirrored selfie poster, a t-shirt, the things you put out into the world should say something. And in doing so, they should invite someone to say something back. That theory informed one of the last projects we did working together at Google, which was this job application for the Creative Lab 5 program. So every year they invite a writer, a designer, an animator, a developer, and a wild card to join the lab and spend a year working on a series of self-initiated and other projects. In the past, applicants had been word of mouth. They had found this form somewhere in the deepest, darkest corners of the internet. So with this application, we really wanted to streamline that process. And we also wanted to invite potential Fivers to make something. A big part of our concept was this idea of a versatile cover letter. So at first glance, the website appears to be an abstracted version of Google's own homepage, but for those curious enough to poke and click around, it quickly reveals itself to be all those shapes are actually vectorized. So if you're a designer or an illustrator, perhaps you can make something visual. If you're an animator, you could use this timeline along the bottom to animate something. If you're a writer, that search bar is actually a text bar. And if you're a developer, you can actually get into the code and unlock other features and badges. And when you give someone a box, kind of this blank space to think outside of or doodle within, the results are wild. We had, over 8,000 people apply for this program that usually only received a handful of applicants. And this was just a sliver of what some of those folks made. We also tried to practice transparency. Especially in the studio, we believed that if we could be transparent in the things that we were learning and struggling with, hopefully that would make it a little bit easier for someone else just starting out. We did that through things like walking through our profit and loss statement at design conferences we spoke at, or answering the ever-popular question of where do your clients come from in the form of this beautiful pie chart that we shared on Instagram, or from the process of showing a young design studio developing their process. We've all read one of these articles, maybe 2, maybe 3, but the ones that promise to disclose the creativity secret or strategies for making magic. But it's this framing and our complicity in it that not only does our entire industry a disservice by promoting this false narrative of some sort of secret toolkit you need to be a designer, but it also makes it difficult for us to negotiate and advocate for design's really real, tangible value when we describe it as something like magic. So we wanted to demystify the process of a design studio developing their process. We also selfishly wanted to learn how to live stream, which we did in a few different ways, one of which included duct taping an iPad to the ceiling of the new museum. And so we decided to respond to 26 briefs over 26 hours, so one for every letter of the alphabet. Nikki built this cool little generator where we'd click a letter, and it would give us a word and a definition, and then we would make something responding to that word. For us, this was an exercise in trying out a lot of different ways of working together, albeit under pretty extreme circumstances, in hopes of over and over and over again trying to figure out how this group of people comes up with good ideas. At the end of every hour, we would share what we had made, as well as the highs and the lows. Some of the lows were lower than others. We also made some friends, like Shelley in Brisbane, Australia, who let us know around 2 a.m., 2:03, just as all our friends and family members had absolutely abandoned us in our wild adventure, that they had put the live stream up on all the screens across their campus. So that was pretty much the final motivational push we needed at 2 a.m. to finish this creative endurance test. We made a lot of arguably useless things. We made a photo series. We designed a house that we could all live in together, very optimistically. We did music videos, Dink Bar, Kind of a Kind Bar. But mostly we discovered that when you invite people into your process, they tend to get a lot more invested in it, and they care about the end result. We had the opportunity of applying that lesson to a project shortly thereafter that we did for Brooklyn-based studio CW&T. Stands for Say, Way, and Taylor. They're the two larger humans over on the right. They actually have another smaller human now, too. And they make these finely engineered objects. They're these products that are so thoughtfully crafted and considered that they hope you'll pass them on to your kids to their kids to their kids, and ideally a few generations after that. Like this nearly indestructible pen milled from titanium, which actually has one flat edge so it'll never roll off a surface. Or this forever jump rope designed and built to be the last one you'll ever buy. A single-use stopwatch intended to measure from one moment in time, also forever. As well as, of course, everyone needs their super industrial, sleek, minimalist keychain. But behind each of these highly engineered objects is, unsurprising, a lot of engineering. Sayway and Taylor are the only couple that I know personally who have a CNC milling machine in their basement, which they put to use. Each of these objects has years of sketching and prototyping and all the different things that go into it before manufacturing and ultimately getting these things out into the world, at which point they usually do via Kickstarter. When they came to us, they were looking for a way to drive more traffic to these projects after the Kickstarter campaign, which they thought would be through a shiny new e-commerce website. See, despite all the work that was happening behind the scenes, all the fans and customers of CW&T were only seeing that work when the Kickstarter would launch, at which point they would just dump this deluge of process photography, anecdotes, describing the entire process and all the hard work that had gone into these objects. And for CW&T, that process is what makes each of these items just so valuable and so thoughtful and lovely. So we really wanted to come up with a way to showcase more of that. We developed an identity system that would allow them to share more during the process of developing these products. Made up of a project dot, a serial number, and an author, the result was this nearly infinite labeling system for any of the projects that they made. The serial number and colored dot are generated based on a series of manual inputs, as well as the metadata from the initial video or image associated with that project, which then serves as a branded frame as they share photos and process photography as it goes out into the world. But, as many of you are familiar, likely so, a brand identity system is really only as good as it is easy to use by the people who will ultimately be using it. So we had the pleasure of working again with CW&T to create a tool to make it super easy for them to use this system. They can choose those manual inputs at the beginning of a project, drop an image in, export it, and voila. This is in action in their feed. That serial code also doubles as a hashtag. So from the point that they share the very first image associated with a project, people can start following along and really get invested in these products as they come to fruition. At which point, they do eventually go on their shiny new e-commerce website, which we designed, and all those images are pulled in alongside the final product. But people don't really identify with brands. They identify with the people behind them. They identify with the Sayway and Taylors. So whether it's being open and honest and sharing your process or any what things, the most important thing you can do is make it human. Work is so much better when it's unequivocally totally you. Mark Horowitz happens to be a human. Most of us are, at least for now. He's a Los Angeles-based artist who got his career started when he was actually working on a crate and barrel photo shoot and was responsible for one of those marker boards in the back of one of the scenes where he wrote "Dinner with Mark" and his phone number. When the catalog came out, he quit his job and embarked on a nationwide tour getting dinner with everyone who called him. Pretty clever. Today's work looks a bit more like this, a lot of paintings and sculpture, and he needed a shiny new website to put it all in. We were really inspired by that story, as well as all the calls that we made from Los Angeles to New York. So we came up with this idea for visually a relatively simple website. It has a huge phone number when you first log on. If you prefer to read, we included that option as well. It's a little laborious, but we encourage you to call.
Thanks for calling 1833 Markheim. Dial the pound sign followed by the project extension. To hear more about the work, you can press the pound sign in a different project.
We also made a typeface out of Mark himself. I think it looks pretty good. Shows up in a few places on the site too. And we've been practicing being intentional with how we show up. We show up in terms of who we work with, what that work is, and what the output of that project as it goes out into the world will be. Back in January of 2017, something between 3 to 5 or so million people participated in women's marches across the US, with many more participating in other cities around the globe, and again, every year since. At the time, we had just begun working with Tia, this chatbot that you message with to get questions answered about sexual health or birth control recommendations, putting together the language and various interactions. But as a project to be used primarily by women, Tia couldn't not be part of that conversation or risk being complicit in another narrative altogether. So the task came figuring out how to be supportive of the marches and those participating without coming off as like icky or tacky like a lot of other brands during that time were. So we worked with the co-founders to build this poster generator, which at the top of the page, there's a letter from both of the co-founders. But beneath it is this tool where anyone who is participating in a march or perhaps is looking for a poster can come and they can make one of their own. They could choose an illustrated background, add a slogan, then download a file, print it out, and then use it. Like anything, one of the best parts of this project was seeing it out in the world. I was in DC, my partner was in New York, and other people sent us these photos from other marches that they were at. One of the earliest tenets of the studio was that not to lose sight that design is just a itsy-bitsy part of like a much larger puzzle. You've heard today about how design is the death of experience, but there's a whole world out there, and to not lose sight of that is one of the most important things. The best designers are the ones who don't only care about design. They're the people who are poking things, seeing if a shape is vectorized. They're diversifying their inputs and absorbing as much as they can outside of this space. You can always change your mind about the things you care about. Nothing is precious. You may recall from that list on Andrew's desk earlier, that was one of our non-negotiables, was that nothing, with a clear distinction, work especially, is not precious. There are a lot of really, really precious things in this world, but we always agreed that our work wouldn't be one of them. And that went for the studio as well. When we had reached a point where we realized we couldn't go any further together to keep learning and growing, we agreed to shut it all down. I don't really believe in perfection. It just doesn't really do anything for me these days. But I do believe that each time we do one of these things over and over and over again, that hopefully the next time will be better than the last. This is a list of some of those things that I'm practicing. I hope you all have a list of things that you're practicing too. And thanks for letting me share with you today.
Carly, it is quite inspiring. She has come a long way, and it's terrific to have people such as the best bits. Just come on, guys. Geez, I don't know. I do love that line. I don't believe in perfection, but I do believe that each time we can hopefully be a little better than the last. And that gives me hope as someone who's very far from perfection to improve. So immersive design doesn't need perfection. In fact, that's the imperfections that make life so immersive, so emotional. That's always been the trouble with immersive tech. It's too perfect. It's too smooth. There's not enough grit. There's not enough texture. So for real immersion, we need that texture. Alwyn has been in the visual effects industry for about 15 years. Let me read you some of his film credits. Harry Potter, Alice in Wonderland, Thor Ragnarok, Tomb Raider, Game of Thrones. Think about Ragnarok's throne scene. You know, Thor's there. Picture it. All those lustrous details. It's texture. Think of Game of Thrones' King's Landing. It's rough walls. It's dirt. It's texture. Texture is what makes 3 dimensions real dimensions. Alwyn is our Adobe Evangelist for Substance. You may think, Substance? I don't have that. Substance is our newest member of our Adobe family. We bought Algorithmic, the company, because of the world of immersive design needs this incredible platform and what it can provide us. This is really exciting stuff. It's the most exciting acquisition I've seen Adobe make in a very long time. He has a full session tomorrow afternoon with a great partner of ours, Rising Sun Pictures, Christina, and they're going to show you much more. Let me stop. Let Alwyn give you a taste of what Substance is. Can you please welcome Alwyn Hunt.
How cool was that? Like, seriously. My name's Alwyn, like Stodd said. I'm an evangelist and new business manager for Substance. I'm also the co-founder of The Rookies. I have a background in visual effects, and I specialized as a character and creature texture artist, which sounds pretty cool. During my 20 years in the industry, I've seen a lot of software come and go, and during that time, when I started working with Substance a few years ago, I knew it was going to be an absolute game changer. Substance is the newest addition to the Adobe family, and it's now part of the 3D and immersive division along with Project Arrow and Adobe Dimension. The Substance team is roughly 180 strong worldwide, and 180 teams strong worldwide, and they have a user base of over 250,000 people. Now, that community is creative, they're loyal, and they're very passionate about the craft. They're also very important to the company because they contribute to the tools improvements. Now, I want to introduce you to somebody. Whoops, that gave it away. Let's go back one. This is G.I. Joe, or Joey to his mates, and he knows a few things about substance, and that's because he was brought to life with substance. Now, I just want to stop for a minute and take a moment to appreciate the level of realism and the attention to detail that has been put into this character. Things like the grease and grime that's on the leather straps, the edge wear on the buckle, the fingerprints and the dirt on the goggles. Something like this a few years ago would have taken me weeks to do. Using the Substance apps, I'm able to do something like this in half the time. Does it take away from the creative process? Absolutely not. What it does is it limits the time on those mundane tasks of creating these masks and all the rest of it, and it allows more time on the art of actually texturing and adding this beautiful detail back into these images. So who uses it? Games were an early adopter of Substance. 95% of AAA console games produced around the world use Substance. And why do that? Why were they early adopters? Because they were able to create these high-quality materials, light textures, and be able to iterate on the fly very, very quickly. It saved them time, it saved them money, and it also set new standards in game art. I don't know who's playing games at the moment, but when I play it, I'm pretty much looking at environments just because I'm amazed at the details that are in there. In the last few years, there have been big feature developments in the software, and that's kind of where I came in. In visual effects, they are now a major player in the film industry. Recently, two Oscar award-winning films, First Man and Blade Runner 2049, both used Substance. With hardware development in real-time rendering and ray tracing, we're seeing other industries adopt it as well, like architectural visualization, like retail, like product design, where you can be prototyping in 3D and fast-tracking your whole production while working in parallel with your marketing department. Like the automotive industry, VR, AR, pretty much any industry that uses 3D. So today I'm just going to show you a bit of a sneak peek at one of those apps, and it's called Substance Painter. And I wanted to start by telling you a little bit of story. Can you just swap it over to the demo, please? And the story goes something like this. You know, you're at work, it's a Friday, it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you've got one eye on the door, you've got friends coming around for dinner, you know, you're under a bit of pressure to get out, and the creative director comes to you and says, "Hey, Alwyn, we've got a few changes to be made on your model, on your character." Now, 3D and a few changes doesn't work, but it does when it comes to Substance, and that's because of these high-quality materials that are produced by the Substance team that you're able to use as a starting point, as a base. So let's just have a look at this character here. I just want to rotate my lights just so I can show you the level of detail that we can get. So this character could be for film, could be for games, it could be for a commercial. So the creative director says to me she's got a few changes and she would like to change this Kevlar vest and this base fabric and a few other bits and pieces. And I'm like, okay, I've got 10 minutes to get out the door, and otherwise I'm in a lot of trouble. So I can go in here, and when I'm talking to people about Substance Painter, I'd like to explain it and say, if you know Photoshop, then you're going to know Substance Painter. It's very similar in the setup, in the sense that you've got a layer stack, you've got folders, you've got masks, even the blend modes are almost exactly the same. It's very simple. You've got a base set of materials down here that ship with Substance Painter by default, and if you can't find the material that you're looking for within the actual app itself, then up here you've got a link to Substance Source, which has almost 2,000 high-quality materials. So you can see where I'm going. If you're working on a film or in a game and you've got these high-quality materials that you're able to start with as a base, it can save you a huge amount of time. So let's go back to our character, and I'm just going to change this Kevlar to a carbon fiber, and I've got a carbon fiber material, and that's by default. So you can see there it's brand new, and I need to just change the scale of that. So I can punch that up. I'm just going to just close down those other layers behind it so we get this nice shiny carbon fiber. And then it's looking a bit too shiny, so I can just play with the roughness material just to drop that right back down so it's looking a little bit more worn. So we want to change this base fabric here as well. So we can go into our smart materials, and there's a bunch of military and camo sort of materials I can grab here. So I can just, again, drag and drop that onto my layer stack or straight onto the actual geometry itself. Art director says, yeah, that's looking pretty good, but the vest is still looking a bit new, and we needed to, color match it with the camo material. So I can come in here, go back to my carbon fiber, and I can just grab some colors based off that there, and I can just punch that up a little bit so we can see it on the back screen. And maybe I want to just change this back one as well. Again, I can just sample straight from here. So that's looking pretty cool. It's still looking a bit new, so we're going to make some changes to that. If I go back to my fabric at the back here, we need to just increase the frequency of that base fabric. So I can just go in here and just easily, and you can see, this is the old way. Used to be a lot of masks, a lot of manual process, color maps, roughness maps, and all this manual data sort of management. This is extremely fast to be able to do. And if you need to come back and go, you know what, I need to add some dirt and grime to this, I can add another material down here. So I'll go back into my materials, and I've got like a steel. So I can just add that there, and I can, again, like Photoshop, I can just add a mask. And I've got smart masks down here, so by default, they ship with a good selection of smart masks. All these materials and all these masks are created by another app called Substance Designer, and that really is the architect behind the Substance Source, all the materials on there, and also in here. So I can grab a mask here, and I can just drag and drop that straight on there. And you can see I'm already getting some edge wear going on there, and I can come back on here and actually just punch that up a little bit, the grunge amount. You can see, maybe just do the scale a little bit bigger, something like that. And you can see, if I just rotate the lights, I'm getting some edge wear break up there. And if I need to, I can come in here and just right click and hand paint some stuff as well. Go into my brushes, really good selection of brushes in here. And I can just add details in as I need to, or take them away. So I've got that control to be able to do some hand painting. When I'm doing this, I'm usually trying to work an asset up to about 90% where it's fully procedural, non-destructive. So I'm preempting that, hey, you need to, do some changes here. So the less that I can sort of do hand painting wise, that I'm sort of holding off. So the last change was to come through here and just change the actual color of the eyes. So I can change it from this dark color to a nice blue color. So I'm just going to go in there, punch that right up, and I'll just give some lightness to that as well. So you can see, and the other good thing is it's all PBR workflow, which means that the materials react correctly depending on your lighting conditions. So you can see here I've got some high definition range images that I can just drag and drop into my background, and the material is going to react correctly to that. So if you guys are interested in learning more about the Substance products, and I'm telling you there's a lot more to learn, and you'll be blown away when you start seeing, I'm only scratching the surface of this, but as Stodd mentioned, I have a breakout session tomorrow, and I'd love to see you all there so I can show you more about how great this tool is and how it's actually revolutionized the whole texturing pipeline. Thank you very much for listening.
Hey, isn't that amazing stuff? Okay, please keep it going for Alwyn Hunt. That's amazing. Now I know it's probably raising a lot of questions for you. Again, Alwyn's doing a session tomorrow afternoon. You can see the implementation of some of that stuff at our great partner BVN on the show floor. When you have the VR headset on, all of that texturing is using Substance in an architecture model framework. So it's really terrific. Okay, So now, our third and final speaker for the day is going to talk about, it's a pretty horrible term, it's called multi-channel design. What it means is Mike Rigby. Mike Rigby, look, really, he's one of the nicest people you could meet. You know, but in this world, nice is not enough. He's extremely well known. He's a creative powerhouse. He knows the importance of creativity in transforming a business. Interestingly as well, Mike started as a graphic designer, and he brings that foundation with him, as you'll see, the things that we learnt as graphic designers, type and layout, he builds on through his quite amazing career. It's an amazing career because he is now the VP and Executive Creative Director, which he said, don't worry about that, just call him a designer, but at RGA, the VP and Executive Creative Director. He's award-winning. He's won many international awards. He's done brand identity, he's done animation, he's done packaging, direct mail, advertising, writing, marketing. Like he inspires anybody he speaks to. And he recalls the craft of design, and he speaks to that strategic story that you tell and the transformation that really good design has. Mike tells me, and I'm guaranteed that you'll buy into this by the end of his session, that it's the best time to be a designer. A great way to finish off today, and as our final speaker for the afternoon, to prove to you that there's never been a better time to be a designer. Please welcome from RGA, Mike Rigby.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mike. Very nice to meet you all. So I work with the lovely people at RGA, based in our New York office. So this is our space. It's designed by Sir Norman Foster. There's about 1,000 of us in this space, gigantic. It's a bit like an airport meets a design museum and a spaceship. And so there's about 2,000 RGAs throughout the world and 19 offices. On the left there, you see that shelf? That shelf is full of literally thousands of awards. Cannes, D&ADs. I have to walk past that shelf every day on my way to my desk. No pressure. So I'm a designer, I'm a graphic designer. This was the first thing I designed at RGA 5 years ago. I needed a new screensaver, my own little cheeky Rigby logo. And it's probably the best thing I've designed, to be honest, in my career, so it's been downhill since the first day. So we work with brands like Nike. We've been working with Nike for 20 years. All kinds of things. We design Nike Plus. We design the Nike Apple Watch. We do things like sneaker drops and all kinds of products and service work. I don't know if you know much about RGA, but it actually came out of the movie business, so it didn't come out of the agency business. So we can do interesting things like CGI. So this is a humpback whale that we modeled in our content studio, and then we had it swim around Times Square for 3 hours. This beautiful whale serenely swims around all the boards to launch the latest phone. This is a cool project we just finished. So we redesigned the Golden Globes. And it was interesting, our client said, can you please redesign our award? Because people keep dropping it. It's so badly designed. Look at the legendary Lady Streep there. How are you supposed to hold that thing? So we redesigned it so it's more ergonomic. But also, it's one of the most copied and forged awards in the world, interestingly. So each one of these, we put a chip inside it that authenticates it, so it's impossible to copy. We got invited to the Golden Globes, and even on the right there, that's Aldo. He's one of our creative technologists. He's awesome. And he was fitting the chips in everyone's award backstage. So we've got like Glenn Close, hovering art director, over his shoulder. Amazing. So I love my job. I really do. I don't just mean working at RGA. I mean, I love being a designer. I really do love our industry. And for me, it's not just a job, it's a way of life. So you have optimists and pessimists and designers. So optimists see the glass half full, pessimists half empty, and designers see the wrong-shaped glass. I always show this slide. I've been showing it for years. It's a riff on an old Economist ad. And I love it because I've never found a better way of visualizing what design means to me. And to me, design is not just something you do at the end. It's not just an aesthetic or a craft or a look and feel. It's actually a way of solving problems, right? A way of thinking, a way of doing things. And I think it can be transformational. I come from a really small town in the north of England. I did not go to a good school. I did not do particularly well at school. But I actually found, through design, a way to show up and be somewhat useful and contribute. And for that, I'll always be appreciative. So I love design. I also love Australia. So I lived here for many years. Many of my best friends live here still. I did some really cool work here. And actually, I just think Australian design is awesome. You know, all the award shows throughout the world, Australian design and creativity always shows really well. So I actually think Australia should be proud of the design industry. You know, I'm proud to have been a part of it for a little while. So I love design, I love Australia, and I love this moment that we're in right now. I think it's really exciting, especially where I'm sat from RGA. Just some of the things happening in the world in our industry is pretty incredible. And literally every system on planet Earth is being rethought and reimagined and therefore redesigned, right? And so the kind of internet has blown the canvas for creativity so wide open that we can almost make or do anything now, right? So it's a huge kind of opportunity. And now that we can make or do anything, what do we want to do? Like, what do we want to do with that opportunity, with this moment for design? So this is my talk. I basically want to talk about how can we help these businesses help more people, basically, through design. So I want to talk about my own area of expertise, which is branding, and how can we actually make brands a bit more useful? You know, how can we help them better employers, contribute to the environment or culture more thoughtfully? How do we think about design not as something that you do at the end, but as fundamental, right? How can a design connect the business model to the products and services, to the marketing? All that comes together so it adds up to a bit more, and so that these businesses can create more value for themselves and others. And how can we use technology to maximize our creative impact? A lot of the young designers coming through at RGA, they're not afraid of technology. They really embrace it and use it to maximize their own creative impact, which is exciting. So how do we think? Like I said, we came out of the movie business. So this is Bob, our founder. Back in 1977, he started the company with his brother, and it was one of the world's first motion graphics companies. He was trying to take great print work and make it move, make it work for screen. They had to invent a lot of their own technology to do this work. What's also interesting about this is that Bob's always been an old man. I was like looking at this, it's like, how come you were old in the 70s? Got a slap around the head for that one. I love Bob, he's like my dad, he's awesome. This is some of their work. So, you know, really kind of famous movie title sequences. Stranger Things title sequence was a tribute to Bob's early work. This is where the Oscars on the Shelf came from. So it's always been about design and technology, and we might add new disciplines, but that design and technology is always really at the heart of what we do, and it kind of informs how we work and how we think. So when it comes to what I do, which is building brands, how do we work differently? So this is how we used to build brands. We make ads, right? You make ads, you make a press ad, a radio ad, a TV ad, and you push it down into culture, so it's the brand talking to people, it's the brand talking at people, and this is why people hate advertising. Because it's not useful. It's just interrupting you and annoying you. And we can't build brands this way anymore. We have to think differently about it. And so we think about what we call technology habits, not media habits. What are they? Here's a few. So it's everything you do on your phone, basically, or your device. You know, everything from liking and sharing, of course, publishing, and contributing, right? And these are completely different from top down. These are bottom up. This is real people doing this, not brands. So we have to think about how we start here, what we call bottom up, or the systematic part of a brand. Story is still important, of course. The storytelling part of a brand. Why are we here? Why should anybody care about us? But often we start with the system first. What are experiences and products and services that we create that actually help people in some way? I think Nike's a great example. Nike still make great ads, right? Probably the best ads. Wieden and Kennedy do awesome work, but they don't start there. They don't start there. They often start with, okay, so how do we show up? What's the utility or the service that we can provide to our customers to help them live a more connected life, a more healthy life? They start with the system first, and then they ladder that up into storytelling. So how do we work? I mean, this will look very familiar to you. You know, so great design, I think, is great thinking, made visual, verbal, and experiential. What often happens, though, is that you've probably worked at agencies where this happens, the strategy dominates, it takes forever to get consensus, then we get into visual, you do the experience right at the end, and then the verbal part, the key part, is often completely missing. And that's why I love Carly's work. You know, it's brilliant because it's so integrated, and this is how we try to work. It's everything mashed up together. We often start with language, and we definitely start with experience first in the strategy phase. So this is modeled on the Bauhaus. It works for us. Interface is where this often comes together most successfully. I wanted to show this because this is also Carly's work. I don't know if you know that, so she worked on this. And I think it's a brilliant example of modern brand identity. Google rebranded. At the same time, they put out a statement saying the future of our experience is spoken word. And they designed their identity around that, right? So this is how the identity responds. It tells you it's thinking, it's listening, etc. And it's useful. It's still Google, it's still playful, but it's actually helping me in some way. So at RGA, we worked on the campaign, and this is how we rolled it out. It's all about the behavior, right? It's all about the thing it helps me to do. So it's not marketing, it's enabling. We rolled this out across the world. I think it's a good example of that story system framework that I'm talking about. It's not TV ads and apps, it's systematic storytelling. Start with what we're going to do for you, not what we're saying. 2 quick examples. So the first one I want to talk about is a new business. I'm extremely excited about it. We've just launched it. We helped them build it. So it's about making fashion more sustainable. Now, you probably know this, but the fashion industry is the biggest polluter after big oil, second biggest polluter in the world. Just in 2015 alone, they created more greenhouse gases than all international flights and all maritime shipping combined. So think about that. They can contribute 1/3 of all microplastics in the ocean, and it's getting worse. So it's actually trending down. So it's not improving. It's crazy. So it's not just manufacturing the clothing, it's actually the microplastics and chemicals on the right-hand side you can see there that are used in finishing your clothing. So everything you're wearing right now is finished with chemicals, and it probably shouldn't be on your skin, and it definitely should not be washed back into the environment because it ends up in the food system. Microorganisms can't digest it, and they die. And of course, it ends up back in our food, it ends up back inside us, perhaps most worryingly. It's a huge problem, there's a big knowledge gap, and it's in everything. Not just in clothes, it's in aspirin, it's in paint thinner, it's in your shower cap. We're basically drowning in plastic. So let me introduce you to 2 of my favorite people. This is Greg and Beck. Greg is an amazing chemist, and Beck's a biologist. And together, they've invented a new technology, which is incredible. They've actually created a new molecule, and they own the copyright to the molecule. And what it is, it's liquid silk. So it's all the properties of organic silk in a liquid form for the first time. And what this allows them to do is you can actually replace microplastics and harmful chemicals to make your clothing last longer, feel better, stay drier, and it's actually as effective as all those microplastics. So it can completely replace it. And depending on how you stack the protein, it can do 150 different things. So it's a miracle, this thing. And it's no cost to you, no cost to the environment or the manufacturer, because it's a liquid and you just replace the harmful agent. So that's exciting enough. But there's another lady here, which is Rebecca Altman. So she's married to Greg. Now, she's an amazing lady. She's an environmental sociologist. She's done TED Talks. And her father was one of the pioneers of the plastics industry. So he actually created all of the technology that allowed plastic to happen at a mass scale. So he's sat there thinking, what did I do? You know, and he talks about recycling as being his redemption. So he's on a mission, with his daughters on a mission, with Greg, with this business, to rid the world of microplastics through this technology. So it's awesome. Where do we begin? So, active purpose, right? So we exist to advance the world's health by unlocking the power of nature's most elegant chemistry. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is create a green chemistry company that can disrupt the traditional players and actually create like a clean clothing and a clean cosmetics movement. So as we get into design, there's a couple of problems. 1, the problem's invisible, people don't know about it. 2, the technology is invisible, it's an invisible liquid. And 3, it has to work with every partner in every industry ever. So you're kind of like, oh God, how do we do this? So we started with the name. So we renamed the business Evolved by Nature. Evolution is one of the biggest ideas in science, and we're evolving your handbag, we're evolving your t-shirt, we're evolving fashion, cosmetics through and by nature. It's a completely natural product. So what we did, we actually designed this brand to evolve. So we created a custom typeface that moves from natural serif to more science and sans. We actually coded this. Pretty cool, isn't it? So we use an asterisk, right? The problem's invisible, so that allows us to actually show where the evolution's happening. And it also says something more to see here, something more to learn here. And we actually use that annotation in language too. We actually coded the typeface, like I say, so we built this. It's a digital typeface, and it automatically evolves wherever you put that asterisk. This is a tool that we supply to all designers of all types, all partners, and there's also a logo generator as well. So it can literally evolve to suit different partnerships and industries. So, I mean, we didn't just do this because it's cool graphics. It's like a real business problem that we solved here. So, you know, if we want to be more straightforward and we want to be more scientific or medical, we can do that. We can be a bit more classic. We can be a bit more expressive. And that asterisk is a really useful shorthand for the brand as well. So hopefully we can build that up. And now this is the great thing about the verbal design. So it's drier by nature, it's healthier by nature, it's cleaner by nature, it's stronger by nature. So that name also informs the messaging around the technology itself, because this thing can do 150 things. How do you connect all that together? So the name allowed us to do that. Here's some leggings. You can see as we get into the hang tags, these are leggings evolved by nature. Here's a tote. No brand is complete without a tote. Some toys, tires, t-shirts. This thing can go in anything. It's kind of incredible. You know, and not just in fashion, in medicine, in hygiene, all these things. So we're excited about this. And just last week, the Chanel family personally invested in this business. So they've actually invested in it. I can't believe it. So we're excited about what comes next. Check them out, Evolved by Nature. All right, one last project, Challenging Unconscious Bias. So this is a campaign. I just wanted to show how the Stories and Systems framework works. You might have seen this before. Started as a great idea inside Coca-Cola. Wendy Clark, the CMO, amazing lady, they came up with this idea about no labels. We're going to remove the labels from our packaging. Problem was it wasn't scalable because they wanted other brands to do it, but no one has iconic packaging. So you have a Campbell's soup can, if you take the label off, it's just a can, isn't it? Also, back to that framework, it's just a bunch of brands talking at you again, right? So it's so top-down. How do we make this a bit more bottom-up? So they approached us about turning it into something. We started to unpack the psychology of bias and try and get to the real issue. And we do 98% of our thinking in our subconscious minds, and that's where we collect and store these biases. Every one of us has these biases, every one of us. So the problem is you can't put a campaign out saying, don't believe in bias, don't believe in labeling, because we'd all go, we agree. You know, there's no point. So instead, we have to think differently. We have to reveal those hidden biases so we can see them, understand them, and do something about it. We created a brand. It's very simple. It's called Love Has No Labels. And for launch, Chris Northam is an Australian creative. He's amazing. Came up with this sketch, this idea of literally creating a gigantic X-ray machine that removes the labels. You see, we put this in the middle of a street in Santa Monica. You see the skeletons dancing. People love it. And then from either side, a surprise happens. So a same-sex couple, for instance, appears from each side. Love has no gender. Love has no disability. Love has no religion. So it's a really verbal brand, just like Evolved by Nature. It's pretty much just a verbal brand. And this is not rocket science. It's a photo sharing tool. When we were creating that logo, this was the context and the moment we were designing it for. So how do we design it as a frame that other people can put themselves in and share who they love? It's not the brand talking, it's other people. And you know, these are real people. This is not ads. They really love each other, and you can tell. It's tremendously successful. This was shared around the world. Michelle Obama shared it. And it's actually, this is just some of the results. It's the second most viewed PSA of all time after just 3 weeks. So it's great. I just wanted to finish just with one last example that we did. It's same brand, different year for the NFL. So I'll just play the video. It's very short.
I got a creak in my neck, limp in my step, cramping in my muscles every time I try to flex them. I don't want to get on. But if you're throwing love off, we'll some more.
So what's cool about that was, it wasn't advertising, it was a demonstration, and it was filming the reactions in people that we're really careful about. You could see the bias, right, in the reactions, and I think that was part of it. We take this heterosexual behavior in what is the most male amphitheater ever, right, the Super Bowl. And also it was chosen to be in Orlando where the pulse shooting was, and these wonderful ladies were survivors from that. So, some final thoughts. I don't think it's the best way or the only way to work, but that's how we work. We think about starting with behaviors and thinking about the system first and laddering that up into storytelling. It's a way of making brands more useful. And actually, you can just get these incredible network effects by doing it that way. I think another thought, Evolved by Nature is a great example of this. It's not the size of the boardroom, but the purpose that counts. And increasingly, designers like you and creatives like you are being asked into the boardroom to make decisions like that. The CEO's brief to me was, how do we help scale this technology so the most people can benefit? Like that was the design brief, and we designed the business model for them. So I think just a few examples of what design can do and how we can help in ways big and small. And I think just to end where we started, again, in this moment for design, I think whether you're in XD or you're a visual designer or you're a brand designer or any type of designer, your superpower is solving problems. And I think the great thing about today is that there are way, way, way more problems than there are designers. So the final thought is that you are needed. No matter how you think or what you do, you are needed. So I hope that you're as excited and inspired by that as I am. Please visit my friends, they're awesome, and hit me up at Mike Rigby. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Mike. Great to be with you. Look, that's got to inspire you. That's got to make you feel like it's just the perfect time to be a designer. Don't forget, Mike actually has a session tomorrow at 11, I think. It's called Design Thinking Solved. I should know because I'm going to run that session as well. And so you come to that session because Mike is going to expand on the 7 principles that he believes in with design thinking. And look, to be honest, when are you going to get the chance to ask the VP from RGA the questions that you want to ask him as a result of this? So that's a free plug for Mike's session tomorrow, Design Thinking Solved. Come along to that. And thank you again, Mike. He's a wonderful person and a really inspiring mind. Okay, so we're almost at the end. You know, Photoshop was, is, and always will be fundamental to all of us and our ability to express ourselves creatively. You know, from a Mac Plus, when it ran as a mono 8-bit bitmap program, some of you weren't even born when that was out, all the way up to the latest iOS device. Yes, we will have Photoshop on iOS devices, as Alan said earlier this afternoon. Photoshop will always be where you are because, let's face it, of the creative and emotional power of an image. Look, to expand on that emotive, powerful nature of an image, our next speaker, Paul Burnett. You may be thinking, wait a minute, isn't this supposed to be Julianne Cost? Unfortunately, Julianne Cost can no longer speak and she's ill in bed. So, Paul, this morning, with a couple of hours' notice, is going to take us through what it means with imagery and what we can do and expand on with Photoshop. Okay, so as we said, it starts with Photoshop, it's always there, and it will continue with Photoshop. Can you please welcome to the stage to show you the future of that process, Paul Burnett. Thanks, mate. Thanks for filling in.
Thanks, Todd. So it was a year ago that we were up on stage here, and I was talking to you, for those of you who were here, a little bit about Adobe Sensei and doing a little bit of a demo on that. And Adobe Sensei is our framework for artificial intelligence and machine learning. So today what I wanted to do was show you some of the work we've been doing just on one of those features of Adobe Sensei over the last little while. And this particular feature that I'm going to sort of talk about today is actually named after the developer that built it. It's called Content Aware Fill. And it's, thank you. Wow. Thank you so much. No, just you sit there quietly. So the other, it's actually one of 2 features across our products that's named after the developer. Do you know the other one?
No. Tell me what the other one is, Paul.
It's actually from our Lightroom team. It's Leonard. Leonard, our developer on the Lightroom team, built lens correction. Anyway, no, just sit there quietly. It's okay. So anyway, I'm going to show you a little bit about what we've been doing with Content Aware Fill. So let's jump over to my machine and quickly get set up here. Okay, so I'm going to jump into Photoshop. And I've got a picture here. This is actually a sloth bear in India. I took a photo of it in India. I don't know if you know the Jungle Book and Baloo. This is the bear that Baloo is based on, is a sloth bear. And I was sort of super lucky to see it. But as you can see, He's been walking through the bushes a bit. He's got a bit of a scratch on his head here. He's got a bit of a mark here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a tool which is one of my favourite tools over here, and it's called the Spot Healing Brush tool. And this particular tool, it's been around for a while. It's not new, but it uses content-aware technology. So what it's doing is, as I use it, and I select the bare layer, as I use it, what it's doing is it's looking around it, and I'm selecting areas, and it's going to grab other content around it and intelligently fill the area that I've chosen. So all I need to do is come in here to the bear, and I'm just literally just going to draw around quickly, get rid of that saw on there, just click this here, and it's looking around. No longer do I have to use, the clone tool and select a source, and etc. I can just come around and start to clean him up. I've got all of this stuff down here. I can start to come into that and clean it up. So I can spend a bit of time on this, and I actually did, and sort of ended up sort of cleaning him right up using the content-aware fill tool or using the healing brush tool. Now, the trouble is, I said a moment ago that it intelligently grabs other content, but everyone in the audience who's used the content-aware fill tool knows that it's not always that intelligent. And in fact, if you want to have a bit of a giggle after this, go and do a Google search on content-aware fail. What you'll see is, no, don't look at it now, look at it later, mate. What you'll see is sometimes you select an area and it grabs something totally random and places it in there. It puts an arm in someone's head and all these things. It's quite bizarre. So what we did was this year, we've made some improvements to the content-aware tool to make it not have so many fails in it while you're working on it. So I've got a picture of a photo of a snail.
So that's a real scratch on the snail.
This is
cell.
indeed a real scratch on the nail, on the snail, not the nail, the snail. Okay, so I'm going to grab my lasso tool and I'm going to incredibly carefully select this area here, and I'm going to come underneath my my edit menu, and I'm going to come down to content-aware fill and choose this. Now a whole new interface opens up that we've introduced. You'll see what it's trying to do over here on this side. And over here, I've got a mask area. And the purpose of the mask area is I can tell it what areas to use to replace. So I can make my brush a little bigger and I'll say, well, I don't want you to use any of this content in the middle there. That's sort of too narrow. I don't want you to use this content around the outside. That's sort of too wide. But still across here, it's improving it a little bit, but it hasn't really done a great job yet. So what I'm going to do, I've got some extra controls that we've added inside here, which is sort of really cool. And if I zoom in a little bit, and you can see this is what I'm trying to fix here. So if I come in here, I now have the ability to do rotation adaptation. Pretty handy on a snail. So I'm going to turn that on to high. Bag. So now it's actually grabbing content and moving it. So you're happy with that? Do you think that's good?
Well, it looks good to me. I mean,
well, I think we can do better. I'm also going to use scale because that rotates around. You'll notice that the scale area gets bigger and bigger. So I'm going to use the scale tool and improve it even more. Still not 100% happy with it. I'm going to come up to the color adaptation and I'm going to turn that on to high. And now I'm pretty happy with that. I don't think you can see the difference between whether that was there and not there when I do it. So this particular feature that we've added now, much more intelligent way to do it, and is going to save you incredible amounts of time if you're retouching snails every day. But
slowly,
we've taken it. Hey, come on, I'm working hard here. We've taken it a step further. And for quite a long time now, since we introduced content-aware technology, a lot of people have been asking whether we could do this on video. And we have obviously over the years said, absolutely no, it's impossible. Because there is a big difference between doing content-aware technology on a still image and doing it on frame-by-frame images where content moves. And you're sort of going, well, why is it so hard? Think of it this way. It's okay if I've got a camera sitting still and I'm filming a scene and things are moving on that scene, and I can grab, a person walks across, I can grab the wall behind them and put it in front of them so that they're invisible. That's easy. But what happens when the camera's panning? Or what happens when the camera's moving and the camera's actually moving across the scene, changing the perspective of everything behind it? So doing content-aware fill technology with video is absolutely impossible until we started using Adobe Sensei. So I'm going to jump across into After Effects, and just a month ago, we have released a new technology where we're using Adobe Sensei and artificial intelligence to intelligently get rid of content on a video. So I've got a piece of video here of a guy riding a bicycle along the road. So you're looking at this side and you're thinking, okay, can I remove him? Can I use content-aware technology to get rid of this cyclist? Well, that's not actually what I want to do. What I have already done is I have removed the car that's driving along next to him.
Wow, that's pretty clean.
In the video. And if I turn that layer off again using content-aware technology, totally gone out of the video. So how am I doing?
Ripple effect.
No, there's no ripple effect there. And it's cleverly doing it. In fact, even if you look at the car, if you look at it closely, do you notice that it's spraying up dust? And even all of that dust is gone as well in it. The perspective's changing, the video's changing, the background's changing the whole way, and I'm able to move it. So let me give you a bit of an idea about how this is happening. I'll jump to this one here, and I've got a little video here that if I play it, you'll notice that it's a surfer and a friend walking along a path in the early morning, and there's a couple of messy bits on here, a couple of shadows on here that I sort of want to get rid of. I'm not happy with those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically select those areas. Let me do that down here so you can see where I've selected. All I've done is just draw an area around each of those, and then using After Effects' tracking technology, which has been in it for ages, I've tracked those shadows using those shapes across time. And you can see the frames where I've done that down in the timeline down here. So if I play that now, you can see I'm basically just tracking those two areas. And then using the content-aware fill panel across here, I'm actually able now to make decisions just using that panel, adjusting the settings in it and deciding how I fill it. I can now generate a fill layer, and when I turn on that fill layers here and here, and I now play the video, I've totally got rid of those shadows on the ground underneath the video. So simple. Jump to a few more examples. By the way, if you're wondering why I'm not actually building this here, it takes time. I can't do it in 5 minutes, so it takes a little bit longer than that. Let's jump to another example. I've got a beautiful video here. Those same surfers walking down to the beach, walking along sunrise, beautiful in the morning. The trouble with my video is that across here, yes, the camera person, other camera. But look, when I get rid of him, do you notice, I don't know if you notice on here, but as I get rid of him and clean it up, do you notice this lens flare is still nicely in the picture, coming on, the lens flare comes on, he's totally disappeared, I'll turn it back on, there's the lens flare comes on, really easy to get rid of. Show another couple of examples on here. Again, this one, yes, you've seen something like this already, the bike's riding along. In reality, what's in this picture? Let's just get a few things back on here. How busy this road actually is. Yeah, it's actually quite a busy road with traffic everywhere, and I can just clean that up basically by tracking each of those objects and getting rid of them. Now, sometimes when I do this, sometimes when I do some content-aware fill on video, the camera is moving across the landscape so differently and changing the perspective of the background and the images behind it. What I need to do in order to help it is sometimes create some reference images. So what you're able to do is select some keyframes along the timeline, and it outputs those images into Photoshop. I can do the content-aware fill in Photoshop, bring those reference frames back into After Effects, and it will use those to build the interim bits in between each of those and do the changes. Okay, so the last one I'm going to show you is just another one where there are, again, multiple ones and a change in perspective. So I've got this sort of drone shot across.
Game of Thrones could have used this.
Yeah. Oh, in fact, I'll put a little got. We've even got a little got colour. Yeah, that's a bit more got in there. Yep. Yeah. Okay. But in here, all of the other objects that I've got, if I just show you, yeah, I've basically got all of these other panels. I've got people, I've got a flagpole, I've got all sorts of other stuff in the shot, and tracking all of those, and if I turn them back off again, I've got this beautiful clear picture of it. I can now get rid of stuff out of video. That's all from me, guys. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Paul
Cheers.
Burnett, thank you very much.
Oh, I'm going off this way.
Hey, for those of you still staying, thank you very much. We are having sneaks. Don't forget, get out there. We're between you and free beer. We didn't think that through, did we, playing a video after that? I would like to thank Chi, Carly and Mike, and thank you all for staying. You've been too polite. We now have sneaks and networking drinks. Get out there, back to where you started in the main keynote. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next year.